The next speaker, Kevin Schulthies, oh, good, praise God, he's a blessing from God to us. Out of the blue, we're like, Lord, we're trying to do something, we need help. And literally about 6 months ago, I said, Lord Jesus, we need someone that can do this, that can do this, that can do this, that can do this. And boy, did Jesus deliver. This guy, Kevin, has worked tirelessly. That fabulous website you saw, he did all that. The online streaming, he did all that. All this stuff that's going on in the background, in addition to the incredible home church tech team, Kevin has been working with them. Everything that you've seen pretty much internet is Kevin. Kevin has done all that for nothing. He didn't ask nothing. He just served. So, I'm going to get in trouble. Okay. I am honored, pleased, humbled, and grateful to introduce my good friend and man in the trenches for such a time, Kevin Schulthies, ladies and gentlemen.
And as you guys can see on here, just stay up here for a second, buddy. I do want to give tremendous thanks to Brandon and Karina for being a God-centered team. And we need more of those people and more of those teams everywhere. And it was your faith. I ran into him a few days before his Edmonton event, and he's like, and I'm like, oh, that's a cool event, you know. Michael Wagner. I'm like, oh, I want to read more of his books and stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go. And then I'm like, where's your website? Oh, we don't have one. Where's your Facebook? We don't have one. Where's your email? Oh, we don't have any. And I'm like, what? How are you getting all these speakers? Which that's a miracle in itself too. The Lord's blessed you guys and blessed your hard work and your diligence and digging the trenches. Because when you dig the trenches and plant a flag, the Lord will show up. Okay, guys? So thank you, Brandon. Yeah. And yeah, we'll go from there.
Love you, brother.
Yeah, love you too, bud. So, and I want to honor this gift you've given us here. So, yep.
You have full time.
What do you mean full time?
You're going your whole time. Don't go short.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yep, I know. Fair enough. I wish I had more time, but I've scheduled it, but I talk fast, so I'm sorry, okay? So, but they got this nice little system here, if I click right. Okay, so my name is Kevin Schulthies. I'm a Christ-following, elephant-feeding, freedom-fighting, vision-casting, dream-building, disciple-making, loving, and forgiven, non-stop, and saved by grace Canadian rascal. Okay? And that's my bio tweet. I've had that up there for a while. I'm just a lifetime entrepreneur, all things tech. I love no formal education, self-taught, self-directed education. That's, you don't need schooling to do something. You just need a little determination and some prayers and some Lord's help. I do websites, graphic, and marketing. I'm a simple man. I like simple things. I like to teach simple things. Okay? I do this church versus charity workshop, which is, you're getting a hint of it. And I like to classify myself as a watchman and a witness, which is the simplicity of Christianity. I think we're all called to be watchmen and witnesses. Watchmen tell the bad news, and witnesses, and Christians don't do a heck of a good enough job, but witnesses are supposed to praise what is praiseworthy. We like complaining, but we don't really praise too much praiseworthy, especially if it's another banner or another table, and they only agree with 80% of what you believe in, so let's not praise if they say something good, right? Church needs to be better at that. Okay? So this is the message. You're going to get the short version, which is the shock and awe version, okay? So the shock and awe with just a few receipts and a few proofs. Because the long version, right, if you see that graphic up there, big, long, giant scroll, the long version, I have to bring tons of receipts. and tons of proof. But that long version of the talk is about 14 hours. I don't think we have that tonight. So thank you for giving me that time, Brandon, but I'll take my 20 minutes. So thank you very much. I'll honor that. But basically, the long version, we go through case studies. We interview pastors and church attendees and church lawyers, or charity lawyers, and charities, religious and non-religious charities. We do frequently asked questions, including stupid things pastors say. That's a really popular portion. I love my pastors, but they say the same stupid thing over and over again. Additional legal books, dictionaries, terms, calls to action, and step-by-step how-tos. This has been an 8-year project in the making, and I got to jam it in 20 minutes, okay? So you get a really synapse version of it. First and foremost, just know this. I love and respect the church. It's going to seem a little harsh tonight, but that's just the way it has to be tonight, okay? I really love the real church pastors and their roles and elders and the way the church is supposed to work. But it's not working the way it's supposed to work, okay? That's the issue. And as a Christian, I think we're all called to be watchmen and witnesses, and I don't take what I'm about to say lightly. Okay, now the message. Okay, now, torches and pitchforks will be supplied in the back. I am selling them at the back of my room, you know, so I do get some merch money off of that. No, I'm kidding. So, but yes, if their torches and whatnot need to be done, well, you tell Brandon, don't invite that guy back again. But if you think otherwise, tell him the opposite. So, no big deal, but what I'm about to say and show you is what I believe to be the greatest root issue. There's so many of you guys, I think, are picking at the fruits. I think this is the root cause of Canada's failing. Very simply, you can be a real Bible-believing and acting church, Christian church, or you can be a CRA, Canada Revenue Agency charity. But you cannot be both and be legit. They are incompatible. If it takes 5 minutes to read the definition of a Canadian charity, it takes a little bit longer to read the Bible, but you literally will know that they are incompatible with one another, okay? 80,000 charities are roughly about in Canada, are all owned by the government of Canada and operated. Whether or not you believe me, we'll go through some of this, okay? When you lose your charitable status, you lose all your property. You lose all your assets, including your cash. You lose your buildings, your pews, your equipment. And unless you buy back your property that you thought you owned, you could spend years saving and building and buying a building like this one. And when this place loses its charitable status, millions and millions and millions of dollars will need to be raised because of what they call the revocation tax. And that's 100% tax on 100% of the assets that you thought you owned, but you don't, and the government's going to tax you on it, or else they'll take it away. Okay? So, and if you don't pay your tax, they will take and seize, this is right off of Government Canada, they will take and seize, and they can potentially sell your property. Most likely, they'll just give it to another purple-haired organization. So if you think your churches are meant to serve you and the Lord or something like that, and you choose to have your charitable status removed, or they remove it for you, it's going somewhere else. You don't get to keep it, okay? 20,000, out of the 80,000 charitable organizations, roughly 25,000 are Christian. Of those, about 20,000 are churches, okay? So pastors, elders, and board members of your church, just let you know, the government controls you. So let me ask you, does your church agree with all Canadian public policies, which means laws? Does it? Does your church agree with all the laws? Does it agree with all the laws on abortion, debt, homosexuality, pornography, legal suicide, transgender issues, COVID issues, mandates, policies? Does your church agree with all of them? Well, if you're a charity, every week your church agrees to public policy. It's what they call a standing ongoing agreement. You can remove yourself at any time, and you can continually signing up and agreeing to the new contract. So any organization with activities contrary to public policy doesn't even qualify to be a charity. So if your church doesn't qualify to be a charity today, and it is a charity, it really tells you it shouldn't be a charity, okay? Now, David Meslin wrote a great book, Democracy Tear Down, and he says here, this is a secular guy, he says a really good activist and advocator for a lot of things. As soon as you become a charity, you're governed by the CRA laws that regulate charities. By not being a charity, there is nothing stopping us from engaging people, no limits. Most of Canada's best advocacy groups have made a similar decision. By choosing to be unburdened by the CRA rules, these groups have greatly boosted their effectiveness, but they pay a price. So this is a secular guy saying he deals with nothing but basically charities and advocacy groups, and he says all the ones that are charities are handicapped. And the long talk goes into that. So this is a secular guy that says you do not want to be a charity. Okay, here we go. Keep going. You don't believe me? Let's talk to lawyers. I had the privilege of being shell-shocked when I first started reading this on Canada's website in 2015. Kind of put me in some depression because it was so depressing. I didn't want to believe a handful of paragraphs. So I literally phoned up one of Canada's top charity lawyers, Adam Twitzer, who literally talks to Senate committees on charity law. He literally let me interview him, record it, and put it on the internet for over an hour. Okay? So that's one of these talks here. I literally interviewed him, and it's on YouTube, and I'll make all these things available. And I asked him, this can't be true, that the government controls everything, and the government can take everything, and when you lose your charitable status, you lose everything. And he said, and I said, tell me I'm wrong. He says, nope, you've actually paraphrased it perfectly. Which didn't help my depression, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. So then I talked to more lawyers. Another top charity lawyer, right, Robert Hayhoe. He's literally, if you look up what he's written, he writes tombs, not just books. He writes giant tombs that fit on giant shelves, right, of charity law. And he literally says there are concerning long-term trends that should worry churches. I love this next quote. He says, I can confirm that the tax that applies to a revoking charity is a tax equal to 100% of all its assets. He literally said, I call it capital punishment. He told me when a church signs up to be a charity, it is death for that church. Okay? And he literally, on a side note, said, hey, he belongs to, he said whatever small denomination he belonged. I never heard about it. He says they know about it, and they are never touching charitable status because of all the restrictions and all the issues. Okay? So, are you frustrated, mad, in disbelief, or combative? I know I was. Right? Okay. So this is not even the shell-shocking news yet. That's just the legalistic, worldly stuff that you're going to lose all your charitable status issues. This is now I'm going to get into some of the spiritual consequences of being a charity, and it is not good, okay? So let's tick off a few people here. So pastors, elders, board members, they all love money. They all fear men. Ooh, 20,000 churches and their pastors, elders, and board members promise to ignore the Lord's word. How can I say this? Oh, and I bet your church is also among them. How do I know this? I have a shareable Google Doc with actual names of 25,000 enslaved Christian church groups on my website. Oh, but the government also has it. The government also has it. You can go to the enslaved.church, and the government has that same list. You just type in your name, and you can see if your church is on the list. If it pops up, start your prayer life. And listen intently, and rewatch this video later, and book us in for the longer talks. Okay? Or you can just Google Charity List of Canada, click on, the top. You can look up the charity list in Canada, look up your church's name, city, place. If it's on there, you can see all their financials, you can see their board members, and yeah, they're just one of the 99.9% of all churches that are unfortunately enslaved to being a charity. So when these 20,000 plus churches weekly promise not to condemn evil. They promise that. These churches also weekly promise not to praise what is praiseworthy. They weekly promise not to be watchmen. They promise not to be witnesses. They promise not to be salt and light. They weekly, and I'm going to get into this, they weekly sign an NDA agreement. What does NDA agreement mean? Typically, it means non-disclosure agreement, meaning you can't talk about certain bad things, but certain bad or good things, actually. That's all disclosure. But it also means non-disparagement. So they're not allowed to say bad things. That's a lot of interesting agreements that get written in the legal world. These are agreements that all 25,000 Christian charities have promised, and they do it on a weekly basis. Every single time you give out a tax-receipted donation, it renews the contract. You agree with the Canadian laws of that date, and you renew the contract for another year. Yeah, it takes a year to break the contract. Or you can walk away, but then you have less than a year to buy back all your church. So you better start stockpiling. So basically, I'm telling everybody, hey, the church loves money. I know a lot of atheists love that. Oh, I knew the church loved money. I've been saying that for years. Right? The church has sold all the property rights. And worse, they've sold their spiritual rights. By just showing you this picture, does anybody can guess what parable, what story this might be? Remember Esau, the hairy son? And he traded away his spiritual birthrights and all his giftings and rights that belonged to the firstborn, because he was born a few minutes before his younger brother, and he traded it for a bowl of stew. So the church is much like this. They trade all their spiritual rights and blessings that they have to give us and teach us, and they trade it away for a little bit of short-term money and long-term curses. Okay? These are some pretty powerful things, but again, long version has way more receipts. And the mother in the background, she really messes up a lot of things, and she actually gets her sons to do some crazy stuff and brings a lot of curses to that. Because when you have a messed up family and that's what you are in, it's curse after curse after curse, very negative cycle. And this is what the churches have been involved in Canada for about 50 years. The pastors that are pastoring our churches now have been a few generations been taught by blind pastors that have been previously also part of this charity act. So they don't know any better in a way. I'm not saying they're completely naive to things. We've seen this before, 1920s, 1930s, little country called Germany. 98% country called Christian country. How did it come to convert and just become silent on the atrocities that is all things Hitler, right? Well, that's because he slowly registered them, and then he converted their private property into public property. Oh, that sounds familiar. And he privately started putting them on payrolls and stuff involving money transfers. That sounds familiar. Another thing that's happening literally right away, they're trying to qualify and quantify quality journalists now and quality news outlets. It works so well with our churches getting them silent. The government started the QCJO operation to quantify and qualify only good journalistic outlets. Okay? So be careful with that. Okay, so there's two things that you should never be, or two things you should remember. Never become a charity, okay? And if you're a charity, stop it as fast as possible, okay? And we're going to go through some of that. Okay, here's that David Meslin guy. He says, if you ever want to see real upstream changes in our lifetime, we must be bold enough to put all options on the table, even our revered charitable tax credits. This is us as pew sitters, okay? Because when you support a church that is a real freedom-fighting, talking church, you do not get tax credits. Give it up, okay? And vice versa. We have to support our pastors and let them know some things. So, don't have time, but these are just a handful of call to actions. Research this, okay? Research revocation tax. Google it on your phone. Revocation tax. Bring it up. Read a whole paragraph about it. You can see I'm not lying. Talk to a lawyer. Hey, Adam Atwoodser benefited me with some of his time. Give his business some time. You know, or Robert Hohe. Or any trusted lawyers in our groups. Heck, I don't know, Leighton's not necessarily a charity lawyer and stuff, but you can talk to him probably. CCCC.org, Christian charity organization, but they have a whole list of lawyers as well. Sites to research, Canada.ca, Google CRA, the free.church is a website I'm making up right now where you can register and praise free churches, okay? Then there's the enslaved.church, which is the government list, and churchversuscharity.ca, which will be the main website. I'm going to have everything on. Not there yet. I was busy the last few weeks trying to promote something. Vote for parties that are biblically based, or run as an independent if you're biblically based. If you're not, don't. And support the elimination of the income tax, i.e., there's one party, not going to say any names in the back table there, they have something called the fair tax. It literally is the elimination of the income tax and eliminates all of this nonsense by eliminating the whole idea of tax credits. How about you get your whole income? You know, and then when you donate, 100% goes to the thing that you donate to, and you don't have to worry about tax credits, okay? Be a watchman, call out evils and dangers. We're doing a lot of that here, right? That's the way to go, guys. Inform your pastors about this, though. Directors and elders and other church members, they're in trouble, okay? I am a watchman. I've now commissioned you as watchmen. You are no longer ignorant. So now the blood is on your hands. There's a verse about that, okay? So each of you have a sphere of influence. The blood of those Canadians are now on your hands. So, but what can you do about it, though? Okay, you better listen up here. Okay, so let's praise what is praiseworthy, and, you know, that means supporting churches that aren't on the charity list. You know, if they're registered as a business, if you're not a charity, you have to be something else, so that you're a business in the law of the land, right? But that sounds funny, does it not, right? Like, why is my church a business? Because it's not a charity. But guess what? Everything in the Bible talks about building businesses and 20, 40, 50, 60, 100-fold increases. When you plant a farm in the Bible, that is a business. When you plant your seed money and it brings forth and you expect it to return something to you, that is a business, not a charity, okay? That you need some government handout on. The Lord loves God-honoring profit. So we got to change our mind, change our thinking, okay? We got to pay for the anticipated revocation tax. If your church is a charity, I have envelopes that you guys can request, and I'm making them and printing up tons of them. The intention is you give what you are going to give to your church. You need to support them and support your pastor, but you got to do it properly and educate them. That money cannot go back into a registered charity account. That just keeps the cycle going. The pastor, if they listen to the envelope, will put that money in a separate, segregated account. You don't get tax receipted on it. But guess what? When the time comes and that charitable status gets pulled, or the church finally is brave enough to pull it themselves, you start building a war chest to pay for your revocation tax so you can get to keep your buildings. Okay? So we got to build up some war chests here, people. Or be prepared to walk away from your buildings and your assets. One of two. That's the quickest way, but that requires a lot of courage. But we have the Lord, okay? So never become a charity. Get my slides. I give them away for free. Give this talk to groups. You're commissioned. You know, you can book me, Brandon. We'll come to your church, nation to nation, sea to sea to sea. You can book us and we'll figure it out, okay? Support the ministry, support this, and pray, and then act, okay? So some of that, right, just in conclusion, is, find a trusted source. You can go to that CCC. This is me saying that we got to, right? Look at this picture, wonderful AI made up for me, right? That's like Moses, or not Moses. Is that Moses holding up the stick, I think? Yeah, and the two guys, right? And the sun that stood still, right? You need help. He can't do it alone. We need to support our pastors. We need to tell them that they are actually wrong. Be careful. You can let me do it if you need to, and I'll bring a witness and be biblically correct, right? Bring witnesses and receipts and do it correctly and with respect. But your pastors and your churches are wrong. But we need to help our pastors. They're stuck in this too. We got to support our free churches. We got to help churches free other churches. And in conclusion, this is the watchman, one of my favorites. Warning, but if the watchman sees the sword come and blow the trumpet not, basically, and the people not be warned, if the sword comes and takes away any people from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, and the blood I will require at the watchman's hands. You have been warned. But here's some good news. Then whoever heareth the sound of the trumpet and taketh not warning, if the sword comes and takes them away, the blood's on their heads. He hears the sound of the trumpet and took not warning, it's on them. But he that taketh warning shall deliver their soul. Okay? There will be some that hear this warning. I have preached this and shared this with a handful of pastors over a few years, and some of them have created new churches and was about to be charities, and they are not. And they are free to do and say what they want. This last COVID issue was one of the greatest revealers ever. Okay? As for me and my house, I will serve the Lord. What about you? Thank you very much.